All right, how's everyone doing? I am Rich CELENZA. Thanks for checking out the Rich CELENZA show. So, what I think I'm going to call this podcast is creating placebos. And, I know a lot of times when you think of placebos, you think of like sugar pills, things in that nature. But I think a lot of us create this bullshit that we think makes us feel better when in reality, it may or may not. It may make us feel better, but the reality is we don't necessarily need it. And the reason I bring this up is because I was at the gym again today. And I hear these guys talking in the locker rooms. If they don't get certain supplements inside their body, they are not going to get certain results, or they feel a certain way if they take certain things. And I understand if you feel a certain way regarding taking something, but a lot of times I think we put these things in our heads that if we don't take them, it's going to have a negative effect on us, or we're not going to get the results we desire, and all this type of shit. And I used to kind of believe a little bit in this type of thing, but I've always actually gone the opposite. And it sounds kind of wacky, but I did for most of my life. I goof around and say I took Flintstone vitamins, and I used to think that was, even though it's ridiculous. I mean, vitamins are vitamins, right? But I used to think they were almost like an indestructible, made me indestructible to a certain point. And I think it started as a child, in my childhood, when I used to be sick. I used to have a lot of issues, health, and I used to take the Flintstones off and on, as a kid. But I think after I had my hernia operation, because I had my tonsils out, then a hernia operation, I really started taking, more Flintstones, one a day. And it was like a thing to make me feel like I'm doing something for my health. And I tried working out. And that's one of the reasons I think I got the hernia at such a young age. What was I, in third grade? I think I was born with it, they said. But also I was always lifting weights, even as a young boy, which made no sense. I was always trying to lift heavy things. I don't know why. It was an internal thing. But I think I always had the Flintstone vitamin. Anyways, I'm not going to get too long-winded with that. But I carried that up until my 40s. I went to a doctor's appointment. And my doctor always wanted my workout routines and stuff because he seen me go up and down with my weight fluctuating through the years. But when I saw him in my late 90s, in my late 30s and 40s, I went and worked valet for a while. And I was always like 220, 230. And it was outside in Florida, and I had to run a lot. And then you're in the heat, and then I ended up doing a lot of stuff in the front. But I really trimmed down. I was also helping my friends at an Italian restaurant, working there as well. So I was kind of pulling doubles. I got really shredded, and I walked in there, and he was like, "What the hell? What are you taking? I need to get out, whatever." Because my doctor, I think, is younger than I am. And I'm like, "Nothing." He's like, "Well, how do you," I told him I was running, in valet and still lifting a lot of weights. And he's like, "Well, what supplements are you taking?" And I goofed around. And I said, "I take Flintstone vitamins." Now, he had a laughing fit. I may have even discussed this on a previous podcast, maybe a year or two ago. And he says, "Seriously, what do you take?" And I said, I take a Flintstone a day with my kids. And he was still laughing. And then he said, "All right, up it to 2." And we were both laughing. But I think what happened with me with the Flintstone was I kind of did it for a long period of time. And then my kids now are going into their mid-20s. So I got them on Flintstone vitamins, and I was taking it along with them. So that's kind of how this carried out. But then, it was interesting because I stopped kind of taking Flintstone vitamins not long ago. And I was wondering, I felt different. And I know it's mental. And I'm thinking now I got to go back on them. This is ridiculous. But the truth was, having just something like that in my mind was always a game changer for me. And I think maybe instead of, I should say this. A lot of people, when they get sick, I don't care if you take NyQuil, I don't care if you take an aspirin or whatever, you feel like, "Oh my God, I got to take this and then I'll feel better." You have some regimen, is that the word? Where if this happens, I have to have this. And it can even be coffee. If you don't have coffee in the morning, you may be an asshole. If I don't have orange juice with eggs, hypothetically, it's miserable. Or if I don't do this in the morning, my day's ruined. If I don't do this in the afternoon, that's ruined. If I don't do this during my workout, if I don't do this at work, everything's got all these fucking rules. They're almost like a bunch of placebos to a certain degree. And they're all kind of like, are they made up in our head? Are they fake? Are they real? Some obviously are to us. But if you listen to anybody else, like I used to tell my mom, she has to have coffee, and then she has to have tea in the morning, and then she has to have, her bread toast, and then whatever. I'm like, you understand this is all kind of made up in your head. right? But then I looked at myself and said, what have I made up in my head? Because none of us, for the most part, live, and I discuss this all the time, other people's lives, right? None of us. So we all do different things. I don't care if you're married. I don't care if you got siblings. I don't care what the hell. You have your own way of doing things that work for you. But I was thinking like on the placebo thing. Again, I think a lot of us, though, we have our, whatever you want to say, our traits, our habits, good and bad. But, I was wondering if kind of picking up, like creating your own placebo to a certain degree, new ones, or just experimenting with them, because I'm always about experimenting. But it's kind of like creating something maybe that you never did before, because I used to go the opposite of what most people would tell me to do. And it worked out pretty well for me, at least physically. Mentally, I can't say. I'm still crazy. But physically, they'd be like, even if I got sick, oh, Rich, you got to take NyQuil and you got to take this shot and this and that. And I'd be like, I'm not down with that. I would be like, let me just drink more orange juice, because I think vitamin C, when I drink it, I feel really good. And then people would be like, oh, Rich, when you get sick with your stomach, hypothetically, take Pepto-Bismol. I'm just using for examples. And I'd be like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just make a bunch of fresh juices. Because again, I know that's probably going to like flush through me. And I feel good on a lot of fresh juices. And I haven't been drinking as many. I've been doing, say, more smoothies. So, and then all of a sudden something will go away. For me, it'll work for me. I just never depended on medicines. I'm kind of a big puss with a lot of shit. I've discussed this before. I'm afraid of pills. And I'm afraid of needles. Basically, I'm afraid of doctors, which is crazy because I have a daughter that is a type 1 diabetic, and I have another daughter that had a liver transplant. So I'm around a lot of it, but I'm still fearful of it. And if you're somebody who, like, maybe you're kind of in a rut and you are doing whatever you're doing all the time. Now, I'm not telling you to do this to depend on something else, but it may be time to just kind of as a fun thing. Now, I'm not saying get extreme. I'm not telling you to get on drugs or anything like that. But it could be something as simple as saying, I'm going to drink more water. Or I'm going to do at night something like walk a mile. Or, something, even if you want to take something maybe, I don't know what it is, but something that's very healthy for you. Because I think a lot of times when we think of certain things, I'm not saying it's unhealthy to take medicine, but we take certain things that we become addicted to. I don't care if it's a cigarette. I don't care if we need a glass of wine. And I'm not saying wine's bad for you or that you got to quit whatever you're doing either. Let's not get ridiculous. What I'm saying is maybe create a healthy placebo. And, just doing something or with somebody else that you may have never done before. And again, that could be something physical, but something to really kind of make you start feeling better. Because I definitely think now more than ever, in 2020, I guess you could say, is a lot of us are falling in ruts. And I find myself in that point as well. I'm finding a hard problem, and I think I'm going to do a podcast on this. I'm having a hard problem adapting to society right now. Now, I don't know if it's because I'm middle-aged or what my problem is, and I'm going into 60 years old here. So even though I'm in my early 50s, you got to think, hey, what the hell? I'm heading into my 60s. What am I going to be? How is the world going to look like? What am I going to feel like physically? What am I creating as far as an identity? But really, a lot of things, I do weird things. For instance, back to coffee. I only drink coffee for the flavor. I only drink liquor if I drink it for the flavor. It's got to be like a margarita because I like that flavor. But if it was non-alcoholic, I'd love it just as much. If I get a pina colada, I don't care if there's alcohol in it or not. I smoke a cigar, not to get buzzed or anything like that. I like the flavor, and then I may smoke part of the cigar, a little bit, medium, maybe finish it. I don't know, but I do things for the pure enjoyment, not because of the feeling I'm getting out of it. And I think that confuses a lot of people. They'll be like, Rich, you got to drink coffee in the morning because the caffeine, blah, blah, blah. I says, I don't even know what you're talking about. I drink coffee later in the afternoon or late at night. I think it's just my Italian background. A lot of Italians would drink and I did in the mornings too. As a young kid, like 5, 6 years old, they'd make the, espressos and cappuccinos even. And then I would feel horrible, but I loved the flavor. And then up until about 5, 6 years ago, I got back on coffee, but I realized I need it with a full stomach. When it's empty, My stomach's empty. It feels like it's burning, like an acid. I also didn't like the way I felt on coffee during the day. But a lot of my Italian aunts would drink Italian coffee at night. After cake and coffee, that thing at night. Or when they were going to bed. Or they were doing paperwork. My Italian aunts on my father's side ran big companies. They have factories. One of them still owns one of the biggest Mare factories in the world. She's Sicilian. And my other aunt would go to bed, and she helped run my uncle's factory, which is a clothing factory. And again, drinking coffee at night, these ladies, and my other Italian Aunt Louise, and my mother would jump in there sometimes too. But my point being is, I was drinking coffee at night, and it kept me up all night. But it made me feel, even at a young age or later, again, I didn't like necessarily the feeling as much as I loved the flavor. So what's interesting is just having something that tastes great was something to look forward to. If you sometimes got to understand, I think we're always looking for a certain feeling is what I should wrap this up with. And maybe I just don't like being buzzed. I don't like being high. I don't like really any of that shit. It aggravates me, actually. Being drunk really aggravated me. That's where I had a lot of problems. I don't know if it's, just anger issues, just something. It don't work for me. And, sometimes you may be going through those things too. What you think is helping you or making you feel a certain way at the beginning, what does it feel like at the end? Because I think a lot of people with alcohol, or even say smoking, or certain things, when you're having it, it's fun and it's good. But then before you know it, it becomes daunting and it becomes maybe a bad habit, but what made you feel good at the beginning is what I should say, is starting to make you feel bad. So back to going full circle, I once said, I have to quit cigars. I was smoking a lot of cigars at one period where a lot of my buddies in Chicago were making a film. And I said, I have to replace this with something healthy. I knew I already liked smoothies. And what was interesting, it's hard to quit smoking cigars or cigarettes or anything. I get it. Every time I craved it, I would literally go out and get a smoothie or make one. And before you know it, I started, and I discussed this before, it started to feel better than even when I was smoking the cigar. Now, that's my thing. That doesn't have to be you. But maybe there are things out there that you can replace something with as well. So that's just my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. All right. Anyways, if you get a chance, check out my YouTube. I've been putting up a lot of different stuff on there, especially about men's wardrobe and fitness. But I put up a video today on, going back to a vintage, just t-shirt, white, nice shirt, not undershirt. So you might want to check that video out. I did one on a leather coat. I did one, a couple on grooming too. Some tricks of the trade regarding taking care of your teeth, how I shower correctly, all this wacky stuff. So you might want to check that out. Also on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you have any questions or comments, let me know. All right, take care, and I wish you nothing but the best.